One of these days.
Time travel?
We'll time travel.
Okay. No, wait, we don't have rhythm, Kev. You can't bounce your head to it.
What are you doing over there bouncing your head to the rhythm?
I clapped that one time because it was good.
It was with the rhythm.
Of the night.
Why, Sean? Why?
Hi, Kev.
You ready, Freddie?
I'm ready.
All right. Welcome back to another episode of Tech Tips. I'm Chris Tripp.
I'm Sean Roop with neoRhino IT Solutions.
And today we'll be going over end of life, or otherwise known as EOL.
Yep. So, Chris, what is end of life?
Well, end of life is typically, this is a time where Microsoft and other companies stop servicing your hardware or software. This means your hardware or software needs to either be replaced or upgraded. And for that, we will get into a few things like Windows 7 and whether or not it's a good idea to upgrade or replace your hardware. So, Sean, what would be some reasons that you'd rather, upgrade your hardware rather than just update Windows 7 to Windows 10 on the current?
Okay, yeah, so it kind of depends on how old that machine is, how old the technology is, what the warranty status of that machine is. Because you're right, when you're talking about hardware, right, hardware has its own separate end of life, essentially.
Yeah.
Where warranty will stop, or if you haven't purchased an extended warranty, or just if it's an old machine, it may be valuable to you to look into refreshing that hardware rather than just paying, for the upgrade to Windows 10 on an older piece of technology.
Right, and I think a lot of the times what I've seen mostly is the hard drives in your servers. Those are probably what go out the fastest. And a lot of the times from what I've seen is they have a 3-year warranty on them. The warranty just ended and a month later the drive dies. Yeah. And so it's pretty much the end of life, which is why they stopped the warranty at that point, is so that once that drive got to its expected date of death, then it needs to be replaced, or you just can't get that replaced for free. They want you to just buy another one. So sometimes the warranties are helpful if it dies before that time, but if it dies after, then you have to spend sometimes a pretty penny just to get a hard drive to replace it on the server.
It depends on the vendor as well. So sometimes some of the, like Dell, sometimes they won't leave you out to dry. Essentially, they'll swap it with a different drive or something that's compatible to it. It can be a little difficult when you're talking about RAID arrays because you typically want to stick to the same style of disk, but you can move away.
Right.
It doesn't have to be the same. It's just preferred. So
yeah.
But yeah, other than hard drives, I mean, we really any piece of technology. So switching, your firewalls, the server chassis itself, really everything has an end of life date. I mean, they may not call it end of life; they may call it end of sale, end of support.
There's also that kind of the mentality of whenever a device gets old, after about maybe 3 years, you're starting to say, all right, I've used this device to probably its fullest extent. Now the newer technology, that's all going to start lasting longer because we've been improving on our electrical engineering side. But essentially with that, we're looking at servers probably lasting a good 7 years.
Seven to 10 is a stretch, but you can definitely. I've seen even with some of the older chassis from Dell that they've lasted 10 plus years.
Yeah, and the thing is it's lasting, and how long is it going to last after this?
Right, and where does that vendor cut the support for that? Because there's going to be a specific point in time where you're not able to purchase an extension to your warranty and things like that, and then you're vulnerable then to failures. So
definitely,
you always want to look out for that kind of thing.
So speaking about vulnerability to failures, what will happen whenever Windows 7 hits the EOL date?
So when Windows 7 goes end of life, right, you're gonna stop receiving updates. You're going to no longer be able to receive support from Microsoft. It's going to leave you vulnerable. It's going to leave your systems vulnerable to any security breaches that come up in the future. So we have been recommending to all of our clients to evaluate. We'll come in and do an evaluation of their network and all of the hardware there, and recommend based off of the age of their machines and what technology their machines have inside to either update those machines to Windows 10. Or to replace those machines with new machines that have Windows 10 built into the
So
system.
now, from what I've learned, is there's a hardware compatibility list, a hardware compatibility list from Microsoft as to what hardware is the most compatible or best compatibility for Windows 10. And so we can actually base our list of all the technologies we've pulled from our clients to make sure that their hardware is able and capable of running Windows 10 on that machine without any problems. Because I don't know how many times I've seen Windows 10 installed on a machine that can't support it, and it has some weird issues. Like you can't press the start button, or you can't type in the search functionality, so compatibility is definitely a huge key to Windows 10. And plus, since Windows 10 was implemented, they've really worked hard on finding the best drivers for your product in a general sense. So they have like a general Windows 10 driver that can apply to a lot of things as long as if it's on that hardware compatibility list. Yeah. And so that's really helpful. But we really, I think everyone kind of needs to know what the deadline is, Sean. So what day is that Windows 7 product going to be end of life?
So January 14th, 2020 is going to be the end of life for Windows 7, which it's coming up pretty quick. So just be aware of that, and you're gonna want to start to budget, especially as we're coming to the close of the year. You're really going to want to look at the fiscal year. We're going to really want to look at getting those operating systems upgraded or those machines replaced.
Yeah. And the operating upgrade is what is it, $9.99? I think
it's $100 basically. Yeah. For the in-place.
$99.99.
Yeah, $99.99. The in-place upgrade takes you up to Windows 10 Professional or higher.
As long as you're on a domain.
As long as you're on a domain.
Professional is a good thing. Professional or enterprise. I think they're actually planning on and don't take me as this is truth, but I think they're going to get rid of Pro one day and then just move to enterprise. Probably. Through the Office 365 software as a service. Windows 10.
Yeah, and that's another thing to talk about while we're here is you have options for upgrading to just Windows 10 or purchasing new software or purchasing new hardware. That comes with Windows 10, but 365 now has licensing that includes those up-to-date operating systems now as well. So and it's kind of an all-in-one complete package.
Operating system that's technically looked at as a service. You just get updates to that
constantly. Yeah.
So they're not planning on making a Windows 11 or a Windows 2020.
As far as we know, at least.
Pretty much from what they say is it's going to be Windows 10 from here until infinity, and you're just going to get a bunch of updates.
Yeah, until they rebrand it to something new. I'm sure.
If that
eventually
happens.
It'll move away from Windows 10. I'm almost certain.
We'll see.
We'll see. One other thing to touch on for operating systems specifically was you had mentioned you saw a client that had an older XP machine and they needed it for a specific piece of hardware.
So it was an X-ray machine, and so that X-ray machine had to run on Windows XP, and so I believe there was a security hole found in the RDP software of Windows since before XP, and they actually pushed out an update to XP for that specific security patch, which is like the first update that XP has gotten in. I don't know how many years. Like
it's been a while.
7, 8, 9.
For sure, it's been a while.
Probably pushing 10.
But that's it's scary to think that there's such a big vulnerability that Microsoft actually went back after EOL and released something for that.
6 years, 7 years later, after not releasing any updates.
And they more than likely know that people do still have to rely on XP from time to time, depending on hardware and things like that. And it usually is tied to some piece of very large, very expensive hardware.
And a new X-ray machine is no joke. It's some outrageous price.
So you've got to heavily lean on your IT side to make sure that they've got that machine locked down and secure. So
yes, definitely.
So other than operating systems, what else? What other kind of softwares can you think of that would?
Pretty much, I would say all software has a end of life depending on rebranding and other versions. So a lot of the times what I'll see is let's say QuickBooks, for instance. You could have such an old version of QuickBooks, you'd call into QuickBooks for their support. It works on your computer, it works with your system, but they don't support it anymore because they're already on 4 iterations up.
Yeah.
So there's in that sense, there are quite a few softwares out there that when you call in for support, you won't receive that support because they don't actually support it anymore. And a lot of the times, from my experience personally, whenever you call up these software providers and troubleshooters, they are really unaware of that older version because they've been working in the new version. They've been taught how to troubleshoot that new version, and they don't even know it. So it's really best practices once it comes down to that. And you cross your fingers and hope you run across someone who's been in the business for 7 years so that you can play with that 7-year-old technology.
Right.
And they can be like, oh yeah, I think it was in that location.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, there it is. Yeah.
You got to get
we
lucky
found out where it is.
and get that one tech there that knows, that's an old soldier technician that knows all the previous versions.
Yeah, all the bells and whistles, the internals, the outside view, and why everything works the way it does. It's there's a lot that goes into a software, and then troubleshooting software is a whole other monster that we don't even need to get into.
Yeah, absolutely. and on top of not receiving support anymore, you're also it's the same very similar at least to operating systems where there may be potentially security vulnerabilities.
All the time.
That were found in an older version of a software that if it's no longer receiving support, it means it's no longer receiving updates, which means you are then vulnerable to an attack.
And since it's not receiving updates, there's no way for them to patch those holes. Like the update server for that specific software, it could just be turned off. It's offline, or it's been completely revamped for the new version, so it doesn't even know where to look for that update. And so then hackers are able to download the older versions of softwares, find companies that are using that software, and jump into the back door and just take over whatever they need to.
Absolutely.
Which in that sense, you can have ransomware. You can
all
malware,
sorts of stuff.
worms.
And it's
any form of virus can be installed at that point, depending on what kind of access they gain through that little loophole.
Yeah, absolutely. It's scary to see the opportunities that are there for older hardware and older software at certain client sites, and you really want to make sure that you from the IT standpoint that you want to really pinpoint those things hard when it comes to reviewing your technology and software needs for the office. So that's always going to be something big that we try to do.
Certainly.
So outside of computers, what other kind of hardware?
Hardwares. We've got switches, APs, firewalls, servers, and think again about the age of your hardware. So that's going to play a big factor on whether or not you need to replace or just upgrade. But these devices will just stop working over time. We're humans. We don't make everything perfectly. I don't know how many just simple USB drives I've plugged into a computer and it just stops responding, and you're like, okay. But then again, that USB drive may not be under EOL, and I have actually replaced USB drives under the warranty, the 1-year warranty, because it's died within that 1 year.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so you're able to call up that company, whether it be Crucial or Asus or any of those top competitors that I'm not going to list them all out, but you can call them up and say, hey, this little device, it died, here's a serial number, this is what happened, and they're like, oh, okay, we'll send you another one, and just toss that one. It's okay. Recycle it, not toss it.
And like we've said before, everything has an end of life. It's not just software, it's not just computers, it's all hardware too has an end of life, and whether they call it end of life or end of support or end of sale or end of whatever.
Or just in general, just seeing that at a certain point of this machine's life, the literal electrical nodes with capacitors and resistors, those are just going to give out over time. So it's all definitely something that you need to look for, especially with your hardware. If you have, I would say, a 4-year-old, 5-year-old switch, you need to start looking at possibly replacing it because it's been working its butt off.
Absolutely.
It's been working extremely hard the entire time, even through power outages, power surges, even if you had a battery backup installed, which we have a video about backups and battery backups on. So essentially we just really need to stay focused on the age of the hardware and
one other thing I kind of think we should touch on, is it's not always just replacing, so if we go back and look at like an older chassis for like a server, right? It's not always about just as the support or the warranty for that, but even if it's out of warranty, finding replacement parts.
Oh yeah.
For some of those older servers, it can either be impossible to find because they just are no longer produced, or it could cost you more to even replace certain parts than it could be to just invest in new technology at that point. So,
essentially you could go buy $100 card that's meant for like a phone's fax system, and keep replacing that card because that's your phone fax system and it only works on that computer. Eventually, you're going to find a refurbished version of that card, and that's going to be the last one you ever find for sale.
Yeah, absolutely. And one day it's just you're not going to be able to find it.
Yeah, so. And then you're looking for an entirely new phone system after the fact that everything died, and so now your whole company's not able to receive calls or do anything on the phone. That's just an example. Yeah. But yeah, I've definitely seen old motherboards in a lot of servers just get replaced, and sometimes we have to buy them directly from China just to make sure that we have the right board, and then you wait 20 to 35 days for shipping because it has to come across on a boat rather than flying it over, which if you're really willing on paying the extra money for it, you could probably have it flown over.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's only like $300 shipping. Good luck.
Yeah. So, Chris, I think with that, is there anything else that you can think of that we haven't hit on today?
That we haven't hit on from what I have in my notes, I think pretty much we just need everybody to be aware that Windows 7 is going to end support on January 14th, 2020. And at that point, no more updates should be going to that machine. If there is, it's going to be a huge security hole that you were vulnerable for until that update. And making sure that your machine's up to date and patched up is certainly a requirement if you want to maintain business continuity. Yeah. But other than that, make sure your hardware stays up to date. Make sure your software is up to date. It's always good to have everything up to date, or else you will have the potential for those security holes. It's just less potential because technically everything has a security hole. It's just up until it's found.
Right. So if you all have any questions or concerns that regarding EOL, you can reach out to us, and you can visit our website neoRhino.com and have all of our contact information there. If you feel like if you're not already covered with an IT provider and you've got some concerns for vulnerability, feel free to reach out to us. We will set up a meet and greet with you and come out and kind of give you just an overall view of your network. So I think with that pretty much does it for this episode of Tech Tips for End of Life.
Yes, sir.
So thank you all for joining us. My name is Sean Roop.
And I'm Chris Tripp, and thank you for watching Tech Tips.
Have a good one.
That's the end of this episode of Tech Tips.
Basically, that's the end of life.
But it's just the end of the episode. The life is not over in us. Yeah, it's not. And we will be back.
Maybe in him from time to time, but it's okay. He's just a zombie. It's fine.
Grr.
Grr.
I could say brains.
He said grr. Woo-wee. I like that. I like grr.
Yeah. Because brains is it's too many syllables.
Brains.
Yeah, I'm just like, I plan on not being like the fully comprehensible zombie. Like I'm not going to speak words to you. I'm just going after your brains.
What?